Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. We're back. Did you go have a snack? Did you have something to drink? Did you go to the bathroom? Well, we're back for round two for today on this Sunday. Grant Arthur from Grant's Rock Warehouse and the Contrarians in the co-captain's chair for the Traveling Wilburys for
Yes,
this
sir.
episode.
Yeah.
A lot of people are probably thinking, Pete, I can't believe you're going to talk about the Traveling Wilburys because we know you hate Bob Dylan. And I'm like, that is true.
I
But
was thinking that when I was going through and making notes about each track, and I thought, why? Okay, it's okay. There's other things on here. There's
there
different
is.
people singing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm a big Jeff Lynne fan. I love ELO. I love the
Hmm.
Beatles, so I love George Harrison. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on Roy Orbison. I love Tom Petty. So it's like, all right, so there's one odd guy out in this lineup, and I will tell you, I don't have any use for Bob Dylan. I know people love him, greatest songwriter ever, whatever. I can't stand his voice. The interesting thing is too, a lot of people have always said to me, well, if you don't like Dylan's voice, how can you like Tom Petty's voice? Because they sound the same. I'm like, they really don't.
They really don't.
They have a that kind of nasally quality, but I think they sound completely different because I hear, to me, Dylan's voice is nasally, it's whiny, and it's very rough and grating, where I think that Tom has actually a very nice voice, most of the time anyway. So, but I bought this. This is the two disc set, which has both albums, Volume 1 and Volume 3, ironically
Yeah,
enough.
I've just got the original CDs.
There you go. And because, I like all these guys with the exception of Dylan. So I'll talk about how I feel about these records and why they work for me or don't work for me. But what do,
You know what's an interesting thing, the way to look at this? Because you heard these back when they came out.
you couldn't not, right? It was all over the
How could
radio,
you?
all over
Well,
MTV.
think about it. Jeff Lynne production during this era. You couldn't escape Jeff Lynne.
No,
Jeff's
no,
everywhere.
everywhere.
It's that same sound, whether he's producing George Harrison, he's producing ELO, he's producing Tom Petty, he's producing the Heartbreakers.
Very
It's
smart guy, right? He's basically put ELO to bed to go be a producer and songwriter. That's basically what he did.
think about it. Well, ELO
He
ran out
made
of
money.
juice,
Yeah.
you know?
Did very well for himself. He kind of built up his own
Brilliant.
brand, right? It's like, all right, well, my brand was the Electric Light Orchestra, but now that I'm not doing that, it's like I'm going to be Jeff Lynne because he's hobnobbing with all these legends, right? He's writing, he's producing, he's engineering. That's like all of a sudden. So you hear his stamp behind these albums in a major, major way, in a major way. And some may say, well, I hear a lot of, Harrison's influence here, but Jeff was working with George, right? I mean, so that they already had that connection.
Yeah, and some of the tracks I made notes of, I particularly do like the George Harrison tracks that are on here. They feel like they could have been on Cloud Nine. They sound exactly the same. I mean, it's that production style.
Yeah,
Jeff sounds like Jeff, whatever he does.
yeah.
And I don't know. I always wondered, is his production style an offshoot of Mac? Because if you think about those ELO albums, Mac was like producing that stuff. He was recording that stuff. He kind of came up with that ELO kind of sound. And I think Jeff kind of took it and ran with it.
Could be.
I
But
don't
no, Jeff
know.
was Jeff was also doing some of the producing himself on some of those earlier records.
Yeah,
I think he already was a kind of a whiz in the studio.
I think so.
Um, and such a Beatles fan or fanatic. I
Well,
think he really studied those, the way those Beatles albums were created, and he always wanted to get similar type quality. So it's not surprising to me that he and George kind of gravitated towards each other eventually.
mhm. I want to ask you this. Like I said, we heard these records back in the day. How do you look at these records now, sound wise, in 2025?
Uh,
Do they
I,
have they aged well to you? How do you
I
look at? I'm just
So we're
curious.
looking at 88 and 90, right, for the two albums. I don't think they necessarily sound like traditional 80s albums that we complain
No.
about. Like they really don't have that. They more have like kind of like a 90s sound. So I think like by like late 88, George and Jeff are already thinking of new ways to produce their records, and it didn't necessarily have to do with what we had heard throughout the 80s already, the heavy use of synths and the drum
Mhm.
machines and all that kind of crap. Because they're not on here at all. This is
No.
like a back to basics, kind of like jangly, Heartland, whatever you want to call it album. There's little rockabilly bits on here. There's some folk rock. There's lots of pop on here. Um, and I think that's for me, I mean, I'll come right out and be transparent and say it right now. I don't really love either one of these records. I don't. There are parts that I like on them. What I
Hmm.
really like is when they're fully collaborating. Sometimes when you have like when they give a song to Dylan and he's got the whole song, he does all the vocals, and to me it sounds like a Dylan track. But yet when they're doing songs where all of them are participating and singing and whatnot, I think it works so much better to my ears anyway. Because to me, the Traveling Wilburys has to sound like the Traveling Wilburys. To me, it's a collaboration between all these dudes. When it sounds like a solo record from one of the guys or a solo song, I don't like it as much, even though I'm a fan of most of them individually. If that makes
Yeah,
any
I
sense
get it.
to you.
Yeah, I like it when there's tracks like oh, End of the Line, where they all take a line and it kind of goes like in a circular pattern and they just go around and
There's a charm to that, right?
there's a charm
That's
to it.
yeah, I totally agree with you there. Yeah,
Um, and I would say there's 50-50 tracks that I like, 50-50. When I look at it, some I think are absolutely brilliant. You look at the first album, Handle with Care, which
great.
was originally a B-side, George Harrison B-side. Come on. That's definitely an A-side single.
Yeah,
And what a way to lead it off. It's great. It's very Beatlesque. And I could have had a lot more of this. But this also could have fit on Cloud Nine easily. You know, it just sounds like Jeff Lynne
yeah,
and George.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but then you go into Dirty World that's got George that has Bob Dylan lead vocals. It's kind of like a loose pop tune. It's just weird because it just doesn't seem like this kind of song that I associate with Bob Dylan. Bob with ELO production. But they're still trading vocals on here, which I like.
yeah, yeah,
But if you're not a Bob Dylan fan, it is an acquired taste.
yeah. And that's the problem I have.
And I don't, Pete, I'd much rather listen to Bob Dylan in 1965 than Bob Dylan in 1988. He was better then. At least you could understand him better. But you can pretty much understand what he's singing here. But I think it'd be better if we had Jeff or George or at least on the first album, give Tom Petty something more to sing.
Yeah, Tom doesn't have
Um,
all that much to do on the first album. I
no,
think, because you got Orbison here and he's obviously the legend. I'm sure Tom was just happy to be invited to the party.
he was.
Yeah.
I think his whole, at least when I've read something about it, I think his whole thought process was, well, I'm really shouldn't even really be here.
Yeah.
And these are all icons. These are legends.
All his
He
heroes.
grew
Yeah.
up when he was a kid, his heroes. So he was happy just playing bass,
Yeah.
you know.
Just give me a bass or an acoustic guitar. I'm happy and I'll just sing
I'm
some
a happy
vocals.
boy. Um, so Dirty World Bob done rattled. You've got a Jeff Lynne song, basic rock and roll number.
It's a
I'm
good
assuming George is playing the solo on there.
I think so. Yeah.
It's loose, it's carefree. It just looks like bunch of guys coming together in a room and jamming. Because
Yeah.
I think that these were recorded really quickly.
Yeah.
You know, of course, all these guys are busy. They probably, well, we have a week. Let's go in and do it.
Yeah.
But then we got Last Night. Tom Petty takes the lead vocal here. One of the best. I wrote down on here. That's one of the best tracks on the album. Sticks with you. It's just like one of those
It's kind of like a
songs.
Caribbean flair,
Yeah.
right? A
Yep.
little bit. Yeah.
And it's nice to hear Roy Orbison take that bridge vocal
Yeah.
because it does add a different flair to it. Because Roy obviously is the best singer of the lot, and we're going to see that well on the next track, Not Alone Anymore,
Yeah.
which is Roy's vocal performance, an emotional powerhouse. I would say probably the best track on the whole record. You get kind of a surfy vibe on that intro. It's excellent. It's catchy. Roy Orbison sounds absolutely wonderful. And his emotions comes right through.
I think it's also, I agree, it's one of the best songs on the album. And every time I hear it, I keep thinking, well, if you add some violin and cello and some synth embellishments, you got a wonderful ELO song right there.
And don't forget, Pete, Jeff produced that Roy Orbison album that came
That's
out.
right. Yes, that's right.
So it all could fit on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all related. What else is on here? Congratulations. Got kind of a sarcastic song. Bob vocal. Everybody joins in on backgrounds. It's kind of catchy, but I don't return to any of these Bob Dylan tracks.
Yeah.
I don't return to these records at all, to be honest. Uh, I appreciate what they were at the time, but I haven't heard these. Teddy's going crazy. Must be a dog. I'm supposed to get a new phone today. I don't know if they're when they're going to deliver it.
Ah,
Anyways,
there you go. Guy's waiting for the signature at the
there he
front
is.
door.
Hold on.
Yep.
Sorry,
Okay.
hang on.
Yep. All right. So while Grant is going and signing for his phone, Heading for the Light, I think, is another really good, great track here. A big kind of Beatles, ELO flavors there. Tasty guitars from George and Jeff, and a sax solo, which I think is really, really cool. I don't mind Margarita, and I don't dislike Dylan's vocals on that one. And it's got some really good slide guitar from George. Tweeter and the Monkey Man, that's a little too much Dylan for me. But the song itself is not too bad. And then, like we said, End of the Line is terrific. And I love the fact that they go from vocal to vocal. You got, Harrison Lynn, Petty Orbison,
Oh,
all sharing the vocals, jangly guitars everywhere. End of the Line is a really, really good song. Just catch you up. I'm just kind of commenting on
okay.
End of the Line. And then I talked about Margarita and Heading for the Light and Tweeter and the Monkey Man. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Tweeter and the Monkey Man's a decent track for me. Co-written
I like
Bob
the
Dylan,
song.
Tom
It's too
Petty.
much Bob, but I like the song itself. I think the
But
song.
this is the kind of song I think from Bob. It seems like a Dylan track. The others don't seem like Dylan tracks to me. But I think I it's out of all the Dylan tracks, that's the best one. Did you talk about End of the Line? We kind of
Yeah, I was
talked
just
about
talking
that
about that.
already.
That's a great song. That's a great song.
That's a great song.
Yeah.
So, End of the Line, Tweeter and the Monkey Man, Not Alone Anymore, Last Night, Handle with Care, be a great EP for me.
Yeah. My note I put down here, a chunk of this is not really my thing, but there are some really enjoyable tracks on here. I think honestly, if you want my honest opinion, take out the tracks that I like from both albums and put them all together. That's a pretty damn great album.
Yeah.
There's enough on both of these that don't really do a lot for me. Um, But I honestly, let's move on to the second album, which
Yeah.
is called number three. I think the second album is a little tighter, to be honest with you, for me. Orbison obviously had passed away, so he's not part of this. And I think there's more rock and stuff on the second album. Like
Yeah.
She's My
Well,
Baby. I mean, that's
think about how that starts out. I mean, that is a hard rocking track.
yeah,
And we've got guitar by Gary Moore on there too.
go figure, right?
Go figure. It rocks. Kind of reminds me of The Move. And of course,
Yeah,
Jeff Lynne was in the later stages of The Move.
true.
So
Yeah,
it's kind of like
absolutely.
a Move track, but it's a great opener.
Yeah, it's a great song. Might be one of my favorite songs on across both albums. Really good. Um, Inside Out, I think, is a pretty cool track. Again, you got Dylan on lead vocals, but I think there's some really good vocals on the bridge from Lynn and Harrison. Then you got Petty shows up on the chorus. I like when they utilize the vocals that way, where they're all kind of taking part, they all have their place, and it just
Hmm.
makes the songs flow really well. I don't know.
Well,
I like it.
it's also got very Beatle-like harmonies on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
That's
the bridge part, I guess that's the bridge. When you're trying to analyze a lot of these songs, these guys are trading off all the time
yeah,
for different lines. I guess it's the bridge. They got George come in. It's great. And I wrote on my notes, I said all the George material is always really good. And
yeah.
when he and everyone's trading off vocals, which I think's great. It gives me that whole unity thing, like they're all in this together. And it's just like it's not like guys just coming in and phoning their parts in.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I could do with that If You Belong to Me. It's got too much Dylan and it's got harmonica. Yeah.
It's
Next.
just a pop tune with Bob singing it. I only wrote on my turn. It's okay.
I
There's
do like
nothing
The Devil's
special.
Been Busy though. I think that's pretty good. That's catchy. I like that. It's a fun song.
I
Uh,
like it. You got George Harrison playing some sitar on here too.
yeah, which you got to have, right? At some point, you got to waiting for that across these
I'm
two
waiting for
records.
that,
So come
of
on.
course.
Yeah.
And then you got Bob taking a verse, and it's fine. Probably one of the best tracks on the record. One of them, I
Yeah, I
think.
would agree. That's
Standing.
good. And I like Poorhouse. I mean, it's more of like a country rock song,
Kind of
but I think that
bluegrassy.
Petty and Lynn work really well together on that, and good acoustic guitar work. I just got great hook. I like it.
Well,
I
you
think
know what's a good blend? I wrote on my notes, you've got Jeff and Tom harmonizing together, and they really sound good.
they sound really well together. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And that
wish there
little
was more of
slide
that.
solo from George. I mean,
Mhm.
great slide player. He's got that weepy sound, It just fits really, really well there.
You hear George, well, George is one of those guitar players that you hear him, by this time after the Beatles, he went slide crazy, if you
Yeah.
know anything about George.
Yeah.
Slide, slide, slide. But one of the most identifiable slide players on the planet. You hear that tone, it's just absolutely, he's got it. That's his sound.
I'm hearing My
And
Sweet Lord in my head right now, and I'm thinking, that's right there. It's like unmistakable, George.
unmistakable.
Yeah.
And in the true, we taught guitar discussions before. The truly gifted players, whether they're technically proficient or not as technical, the truly gifted guitar players have a stamp, a sound that's all their own.
Yeah. Yep.
And George is one of those,
He's
one of
one
the
of them.
greats,
Yeah,
you
he's
know.
one of them. And speaking of him, Where Were You Last Night it's a really good vocal from George on that. And I think one thing about this album that like I wish there was more of, it seems like there's not as much Harrison vocal
Oh.
on this album, which once you get to that album, you really miss him. He's kind of like he's there. You hear his guitar and stuff, but from a vocal perspective, he's not all that dominant on this record at all compared to the first album.
Well, it seems like on this record there's a lot more Dylan. And I think a lot of these people or these musicians, Dylan was, back in the 60s, even when they were out, the Beatles thought Dylan was like a god.
Yeah,
I'm sure Jeff thought that. I think they just basically go, well, Bob's on here, so and he's the man. And maybe that's why we get a lot of Bob.
it could be.
I prefer the debut a lot better because there's a much more of a I do appreciate Roy. Hell, just that one Roy Orbison song seals the deal for me. But that's why I think we see a lot more Bob. We don't have, and I think Bob probably looked at Roy because Roy was in the 50s, obviously.
Yeah, he was
And
before him.
Bob, you look at Roy and everybody looked up to Roy when they were kids or whatever. You know,
Well, when
he
you
was a
really think
big
about it, so
deal.
you had Roy Orbison from the 50s, you
Hmm.
had George and Dylan from the 60s, you had Jeff, which was a much bigger act in the 70s, and then Petty in the 80s. It's kind of interesting how that worked out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
But they all looked up to Roy. If you ever read anything about it, they just idolized him. The
Oh,
fact
for
that he
sure.
was in there, they would talk about him coming in doing his parts, and they just would be in awe. You know, the great Roy Orbison.
Yep, yep.
Uh,
Cool Dry
what else we
Place.
have?
It's a
Yep.
nice petty track, right? That could have come off any of his solo records. I think that's it's old jangly and good chorus. I like that. I think that's really good. New Blue Moon. It's got a fit. That's kind of like a 50s throwback tune. That would have sounded great with Roy on vocals, I think.
Yeah, you get Joy leads off. Joy. Jeff. Joy. Jeff leads off that track. It's good. You got more slide from George. It's all right. But of course, you got Bob coming in on this track, which is okay. It's not too bad. Not my favorite, but there really aren't that many songs on here that I really uh, made notes on that I would really have to have.
Well, there's no can't miss singles on this record, right? Unlike on the first album. I think
No,
this
you're
album,
right.
to me, this album I think is a little more um lively. Is that the word? It's a little to me, it's a little livelier album. Maybe there's more rockers on this record.
Hmm.
But you miss Roy, and I don't think that there's no smash hit singles on this record like the first.
Will Wilbury Twist maybe,
Yeah, yeah,
but I don't hear any singles, which
no,
I don't care. I just yeah, you're right. That's an interesting point. Hmm. What was that? Blue Moon? You took my breath away. Is I think that's a tribute to Roy. You got Tom getting a vocal. I'm good with that.
yep,
One of my favorite tracks on the record. I like it quite a bit. Um, what was the other one? Oh, Wilbury Twist ends the record. And, come on, ending it on the light note like that is kind of cute. Kind of echoes those 60s dance tunes kind of thing.
yeah.
I listen to Wilbury Twist and I just kind of chuckle. And, at least Pete, they're having fun, you
Well,
know?
that's the whole thing. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And I don't remember at the time, but were they planning to do something else and then we lost George? Is that how it kind of all went, or was there ever
No,
third?
I don't think they were ever going to do a third one.
No, that was it, huh? That's
I could be wrong, but I've never read anything. I think it's amazing we had two of these,
I
you
know.
know?
Now, what year did George pass away again?
I think 2001.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had plenty of time to do a third, so obviously that just never got around to it. Or maybe they just did the second, maybe they just did the second album as a tribute to Roy, and they would have, and that was going to be that. So who knows?
Well, maybe they thought they could do one more, and maybe it wasn't quite the same without having Roy in the band.
Yeah, that could be.
I don't know. But we've got what we have, and it's fine. But I'm not trying to be negative about it. It is a product of its time. To be quite honest, Pete, when I listen to it and I listen to this Jeff Lynne production, when it came out, I didn't have much of a problem with it. But now, after all these years, I listen to it and I'm going, I don't know if that production's really aged all that well. I think I might have got burned out on it back during this time period when you couldn't escape it.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly okay with ELO sounding like that. That's what ELO sounds like. But to have everything else sound like ELO, I don't know. I don't think I really like it after all these years,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, there are certain producers that have that signature style, and sometimes it ages well and sometimes it doesn't.
I mean, I would have liked to see Ken Scott have a stab or
I go with these guys, right?
Chris Thomas have a stab at it or hell, George Martin, let's give George a
That would have made sense, actually.
that would have made sense.
Yeah,
But
that
I
would
don't
make
think
sense.
George was in the producing business so much anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think it would have been pretty great. Maybe. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Jeff. He's really good at that particular thing. But I just I don't know when I'll ever return to these, to be honest. Once you hear them a couple times, you know, God, that sounds horrible. But I
And we
would
made,
definitely rank the debut higher than me. I think the debut is where it's at because you do have Roy. I agree with you that the second album rocks harder. It might even be a bit looser. I think that they're just let's just have some fun. But I think the first album's a stronger record.
I
And I think
think,
that's usually the general consensus for these too.
yeah, I think that there are more notable songs on the first. There's probably a couple more songs that I would skip on the first disc, but I think their better songs are on the first one. I think to me, the second album might be a little more consistent for my taste.
Hmm.
But like I said, if I were to take out, four or five tracks from each album and put them together, that makes a pretty good album for me. On the whole, I don't
Exactly.
find I love either one of these. That's kind of my deal with them, you know.
Off volume three, I take She's My Baby, The Devil's Been Busy, and You Took My Breath Away. All the other ones to me, yeah, they're fine, but I
Kind of
think I could make
forgettable.
a really good record out of the first and these three tracks.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right.
Now, when this came out at the time, I think a lot of people thought a lot of these got glowing reviews. You go back in time and look at the reviews. They loved it because they loved that they were doing a super group. There probably hasn't been quite a super group like this since.
No. I mean, I showed the picture before, but just look at, I mean, this looks like a supergroup. Just look at that right there. That's like rock and
Yeah, you're not
roll.
going to get the caliber of musicians, from a historical perspective, you'll never get
No,
come on.
that's rock and roll royalty right there, right?
Rock and roll royalty. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and it's
Yeah,
just
so I'm glad we have it, but
yeah. And they seem like they had a blast doing this. And that's the important thing because you can do it for the money, but it's I think they all respected each other and had a really good time working together. So yeah, whatever. It'll be interesting to see like what the viewers think of these two records. So if for everybody watching down in the comments, let us know, which album you prefer, what you like about both of them, and what do you think overall of this band, this supergroup, and did it really work for you or not, right? Because these sold a lot of copies, so people were into this at the time.
mhm.
But yeah, to me, I don't think either album is mandatory listening. But if you're a fan of any of the individuals, it's something to add to the collection because it's part of their kind of history, right? So
Yeah, I agree
yeah,
100%. And just for the fact they were having fun. All right. I like it. It's loose. They just did it and threw it out there.
that's
If
it.
it's stuck, it's stuck. And I'm good with that. I'm totally down with that.
Yeah.
So,
So, Grant, what's get us caught up in what's happening this week at the warehouse
oh,
and
well, last night I had Rand on the show. We recorded episode 3 in our King's X series. So we
wow,
looked at the final. Did we look at the final five? Maybe it's the final five albums. So that's coming up in the warehouse. Wednesday we'll do the Contrarians live chat again. That's coming up. Oh, Sunday night, uh, Guitar Hack will be in the warehouse, and we're going to be playing 2 hours of Kiss.
wow,
So
all right.
yeah, we were going to
He's a
do
big fan.
post
Must be
punk,
good.
but Hack came to see, hey, can we do Kiss instead? I said, Hack, you're the guest. Yeah, we could do Kiss. So
I
we're
can
going to
tell you,
do
Ken
two
Ken Golden
hours.
won't be watching that show. I can tell you that right now.
No. But I got Ken booked. I think Ken's coming on in maybe March or something.
Cool.
Maybe I think sometime March. So
What's the theme? Oh, you don't
he
want to give
said
it away
it's
yet?
just
Okay.
basically he said it's going to be killer prog. So
Okay,
I
killer.
figured he might, whatever that means.
He's going to pull some nuggets from the vaults, I think. Yeah, that's okay. I trust Ken. I'm sure he'll bring some good
But
stuff.
everybody always asks me, you need to get Ken on. You need to get Ken on. Okay, I'm getting Ken on.
There you go. There you go.
So people like it, because think about his wealth of knowledge and what he's going to pull out for the everybody. I mean, come on. I mean, Rand's good at it, but Ken, he hasn't been on yet, so it'll be kind of nice.
Good.
Keep it
I think
fresh.
we should do a jazz one at some point.
We can do jazz, whatever you want.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll talk. We got some
Just
time.
whatever. You're the guest. You could pick whatever you want to do. Turn people on to
I
stuff.
mean, we've done a couple yacht rock ones. We did a couple of heavy prog ones. You did some metal ones with Ralph, and so mate. So I don't think you've done a jazz one yet. You've done
No, I've
fusion
done
one.
fusion
Yes,
with George. In fact,
George.
he'll be back week after Sunday for another fusion
Gotcha.
show, but I
So
have
yeah,
not done
I
straight.
don't want to step on his fusion toes. So we'll do like old school jazz. So yeah, there's so much to choose from. So that
Well,
could
there you go. Something to look forward to, everybody.
there we go. Cool.
All right.
So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Let us know what you think of the two Traveling Wilburys albums down below. And we'll see you next week here on Ranking the Albums. Tune in. We haven't set a date yet, but Grant and I will be doing Loggins and Messina next, whenever that might be. So that's coming up sometime soon in the not too distant future. So stay tuned for that. We have a whole to-do list of bands we're going to be tackling, but that is going to be the next one. So till
Yeah,
then,
I've had people ask about that. When's the Loggins in Messina? When's Loggins in
it's
Messina?
coming. It's
It's
coming, folks.
coming.
It's coming, folks. Hold on,
Man, you
just so
didn't
you
know
have
that
proof.
Loggins in Messina was so popular, but
Just
evidently
so you
no one's
have
talking.
proof, they're all here. I even got the live album.
Yeah, I
So
got that too.
yeah, so that will be happening, folks. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you
Yeah,
in a
we
couple weeks with Grant together. But you'll see me next week either by myself or with someone else on ranking the albums. Until then, for Grant Arthur, I'm Pete Pardo. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye
will.
bye.